would you tell a story that engages young readers? A story that takes them on unforgettable journeys? Two of our most phenomenal children's authors, Paro Anand and Shabnam Minwalla, join our children's books publisher, Tina Narang, to talk about their books and their childhoods. Watch this session to travel back to your own childhood.
I'm really happy to be welcoming you all to the World Book Day, and I'm so delighted to be talking to two of my favorite authors and two of the finest authors writing for children and young adults. So I'm happy to introduce them both to you. And of course, they don't need an introduction. Everyone knows them, but I'll just start by introducing you a little bit to them. So Paro Anand is a Sahitya Akademi Bal Sahitya Award winner for her book Wild Child. She has written books for children, young adults, and adults. As a performance storyteller and speaker, she has represented India all over the world. In 2019, she was awarded the Kalinga Karubaki Literary Award for Fearless Women Writers. Shabnam Minwalla is a Mumbai-holic, an ardent sari shopper, a murder mystery buff, and an occasionally frazzled mother of three. She spent all her life with words, working as a journalist for the Times of India, writing non-fiction about Mumbai and fiction for children and young adults. Her award-winning books include Saira Zariwala is Afraid and When Jia Met Urmila. Her latest book, Zen, a mix of romance, history, and politics, has been greeted by fantastic reviews. Shabnam was recently awarded the Author Award for Zen. Congratulations on that, Shabnam.
Thanks.
So I'm going to start by, opening worlds, opening different, opening different worlds through books. I think there's nothing better that, it's such a lovely image. And it just brings so many different thoughts to mind. I think one of the books that it's for me one of the most enduring images, for something that leads to transportation through books is The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. I think it's just such a fine example of how, a book and a story can do that. I mean, how Dorothy, and just because of the cyclone, her house is carried all the way and, to the land of Oz and with her really cute dog, Toto. So that's transportation. I think that's the whole, going to a different world through a story. So I'm going to start with maybe Shabnam, you can let us know what you think about how stories really transport us to a different world.
Yeah, so personally speaking, I was a very sickly child. And I think that in a way was my great blessing because I spent hours and days lying in bed in one sad heap and various neighbors would come and dump books on my bed and say, poor baby, read, occupy yourself. And I vividly remember I had some ghastly illness, hepatitis or typhoid or something, and I was about 10. And a stack of books arrived, and I picked up one book with no warning whatsoever about what that book was about. And I picked it up, and it turned out to be about these four children, the Pevensey children, and Lucy steps into a wardrobe and steps into Narnia. And I think that was the moment that made me a reader, that made me somebody who knew that what I wanted to do with my life was create worlds, because I can never, I can't express the magic I felt in that moment. And it's been unparalleled. And every book subsequently, I think many books subsequently introduce you not in such a dramatic way, perhaps, but Enid Blyton, you can't, I know she's not fashionable at the moment, but stepping into all the lands of the magic faraway tree or traveling on the wishing chair, I think it's made all of us the people we are.
Absolutely. I know wishing chair is like, I think every kid wants that, everybody wants that. Sometimes to, just run away from whatever the world is meaning to you at that point and sit on that wishing chair and wish yourself to some other place.
Yeah.
So, yes. Paro, what do you think? And why do we need different worlds, for instance?
Well, I think that for me, the book that converted me into a reader, because I wasn't a reader, although I came from a family of readers. And we had this 1 hour where we would sit together and read. And I used to really chafe at that 1 hour because I wanted to talk. And I felt that reading was a waste of time. But then I chanced upon Born Free by Joy Adams. And it transported me into a jungle In itself, there isn't the transportation as in both the books that both of you have mentioned, but it took me to a land I had never been before. It took me into a world of this lioness and her interactions with humans and her rehabilitation into her own world again. And I thought, that's what I want to be. And I never, I never dreamed that that there could be that kind of interaction between animals and humans. That's what I wanted to do. Do something with animals became my long time ambition. But of course, then what happened was that I couldn't do that. So I became a writer because I had so many ambitions subsequently that I could do anything I wanted to do. I could be anyone I wanted to be. And I could transport myself through any story that I wrote or any story that I read.
I think that's the charm of a pen in the hand of an author. I think you can just do what you want. You can get into the head of your characters. And I think, Paro, you do that really wonderfully. I saw how in Being Gandhi, for instance, how Chandrasekhar, he had a voice that was unbelievable in terms of, can he think like that? And in all of your books, I think you've managed very, very deftly to get into the minds of your characters, to be able to, it's a lot of, I think in your writing, it's so much in the mind of the person. So you begin to, you want to live that, you want to understand that. So it's not just about going to another world, but I think it's getting into the heads, just like you've done. So I think that's something that you do very, very well, Paro. Yes. And for Shabnam, I have to tell you that you made Bombay a city that everyone will know, everyone will love and find so interesting. I think you've recreated it through your stories over and over again. I think it's a place that you want to set your stories in, but it's a place that we would want to go to every time you write your stories. So please tell us a little bit about that as well.
Well, I mean, I'm a Mumbaikar. It is my reality, and it is a place for me of great magic. And, I did a nonfiction book on my area, the area I live in, a neighborhood called Kolaba. And when I was writing my introduction, that was the time I started really thinking about what Mumbai meant to me. And I sort of time traveled back to the time when I was 8 or 9 or 13 or 15. And I realized that a lot of my ambition was to get out. Everybody in those days wanted to get out. Everybody wanted to, be in the fancy West. And I remember standing at my window, and in fact, I've written this in the Kolaba book, and staring at the sea because I could see a little triangle of sea from my window and thinking, if I swim and swim and swim and swim, where will I land up? And then one day I looked at the map and I realized I'll land up in Oman. And I thought, that's not very worthwhile. I think better to just study a lot and take a flight and go, to the Grand West. I finally made my way to the West. And I realized that at least Bombay's energy, Bombay's charm, Bombay's patchwork quilt magic of, many people, many languages, many communities, and acceptance and, a place for everyone just wasn't there. And that brought me home. And I feel, so, in a way, what Maya saw came about when I heard a lot of conversations with my daughter and her friends. And all her friends would come back and they would say, when I grow up, I want to live in Vancouver. When I grow up, I am going to live in some random place, Zadar or somewhere. And I would think, what is wrong with these children? And in a way, what Maya saw was my desire to tell them, look, don't keep staring at your phones. Don't keep dreaming of Vancouver. Look around you. And, I thought a clue hunt would be a great device. And I think really what started me off writing so much about Mumbai was my desire to make young people look at the wonderful city they've been born into, and all urban Indian children to look around them and stop dreaming of other places. Because, so just showing that there's adventure here through books, I think, in a way, transporting you not physically, but transporting you to another mind space where you realize that where you are born, there's every chance there will be a Mr. Pink Whistle in the neighboring building.
100%. Paro, what do you think about creating worlds through your stories? You've done that. And, one of the books that I think was such an interesting transportation, if I can use that word again, was Two. It was so experimental, but yes, please tell us, what you think.
I think for me as a writer and as a reader, I become the person I'm writing and reading. So I'm not reading intellectually, I'm reading from the heart. I'm reading from my gut. And so I have very visceral reactions. But because I am that person, I feel as deeply as that character is feeling. And so I weep real tears and I laugh real belly laughs. And I'm fearful depending on what I'm doing as that character at that moment. And so for me, that is the transportation. I'm also an actor. So that thing of sort of donning another skin and stop being Paro and become Chandrasekhar or, Aftab or whoever it is, be that. And that is the real transportation for me. And therefore it becomes a little difficult to extract myself out of it, which is why if I deeply delved into a book, either reading or writing, I become a little disconnected with the world that I'm actually in, a little different from what Shabnam is saying, that, look around you, it's here, the fun is here, the magic is here. For me, I'm so deep in that world, in that parallel universe, and I become detached, and my family always asks me, are you writing another book? Are you reading something? So I said, yeah. And they say, oh no, because I'm gone. And, I'm not Paro anymore.
So Paro's in her ivory tower, writing. Yes, and I completely know about your belly laugh, Paro, and the fact that you're such a performance artist. When you actually perform in front of students, and how you can just get them to, it's completely an enthralled audience, and all you need is a little prop. It could be just a dupatta, and you're able to do this, create magic, in front of the kids. So yes, I completely know what a Paro belly laugh means. And yes. And so, it's very interesting about the idea of worlds that kids can, and anybody will, be transported to. We know that J.K. Rowling really created that entire, for the Harry Potter series, that world that kids wanted to go to again and again and again. And it's that idea that, and I also feel that how kids get, readers get attached to a certain type of story or a certain type of book, and they want to read more and more of that. I also feel that sometimes when we're reading a story, and I'm wondering if you feel that also, that reluctance of letting go of a story, where we're just so immersed in a story and you just feel that it should just go on and on endlessly. And that's the point at which you think, why 300 words? I wish it had been 1,000, So have you ever felt that for any book, that reluctance to let go, to get to the last page and all that?
Certainly, almost every single time. And I would say for the Harry Potter series, that I read the last book really slowly. I read the first two very fast, and the last couple of them very slowly. I did not want to extract out of that world. There was a connection so deep, because it not only connected to that world of magic, but it connected to me, and it connected to the world I lived in, because the issues, the challenges, while kind of multiplied and magnified in ways that she could do it, also did connect back to me. But what you said earlier of, you get kind of attached to a certain kind of book. I'm not a believer in algorithms at all. If you like this, you may like this, because I want to look at everything that's out there. And I may have loved Harry Potter, but there are a whole lot of, in the same genre, which haven't connected with me at all. So I like to make my own choices, and I don't want somebody telling me, if you like this, you like that.
Yes. Shabnam.
Yeah, so definitely, I'm a great murder mystery buff, as you know. More blood, gore, more twists at the end, and the happier I am. And one of my absolute favorite writers is this woman called Sue Grafton. And she did this magnificent series called the Alphabet series. Okay, so A for alibi, B for burglar, whatever, whatever. And then she did the unpardonable thing. She went and died before she could write Z for whatever. And and it still bugs me that I never, that little bit of closure, what happened. Very tough female detective, lots of hopeless husbands and lovers. I wanted something to know what would happen to her. And there she left us hanging at Y and went away. And even today, I wish if I could communicate with any ghost, hers would be the one I would choose. To say, what had you planned for Kinsey Millhone? You have to tell me. 25 books I lived with that woman. And I reread them again and again. My daughters read them passionately. And many, I mean, in fact, every book, when you reach the last 30 pages, you feel that reluctance and that sadness that it's getting over. And in fact, that's one of the drawbacks of Kindle, because the end comes so suddenly. Oh, how did this end? That feel in the hand is not there, that warning that, okay, now this is it.
Yes.
So,
Completely. And then I think there are some
I
books.
wanted to say one
Paro.
thing.
Yes.
I wanted just to add something about, when you are reading a, a book that is like going on and on and on, like Suitable Boy, because I delved that deep, it was really difficult exiting out.
Yeah.
Same with the Harry Potter series. And I felt, I keep thinking even now of threads that could be followed and developed. Like, I think Parvati Patil and her sister should come to India, and there should be, some Harry Potter version in India, and things like that. So I keep pulling at those threads and think, well, there's a story here, let's do that.
Absolutely. I think when stories are playing in our heads and, when it's a book that we don't want to let go of, I felt that I think one of the books that I remember as greatly reluctant to let go of was The Hungry Tide by Amita Ghosh. And, it's that idea of being at the Sundarbans. It's so lyrical, and it's that idea of traveling with the characters and just never letting them go, and I think that's really transporting yourself into the lives of the characters. But there have been books, interestingly, where you get into a really powerful book and you want to finish it very, very quickly because it's so compelling. And one of the books that I also feel that this kind of feeling for is Arch Spiegelman's Mouse. It's so powerful. The imagery is so pat in terms of, transporting you to the Holocaust and all of what happened at that time. But you want to get out of that book very quickly. So have you ever felt that for any book? That let me read it very fast, but I must read it, So
there are the
I
ones.
felt that sorry, go ahead, Shabnam, go ahead.
And I mean, there are the ones that churn your gut, right? So you have to know what happened, but you can't bear to be in that space for too long, right? I mean, the Holocaust books, all of them. But I mean, even those tragic teen romances, you want to know how it'll end, but that dread is sitting. A book that I absolutely adore and absolutely dread reading again, but I read compulsively, is God of Small Things. And it's heading to something awful, but it's heading there so beautifully. You have to do that journey, and you keep thinking, why am I doing this to myself again and again?
Yes. Paro, you were saying something?
I felt that with Boy in Striped Pajamas, because again, exactly what Shabnam is saying, that you have that dread, you know what's coming, even if you haven't read the book before.
Yeah.
You know that what's going to happen. You see it because you are once removed as the reader. And yet you find yourself walking through those gates and walking to those showers and everything. And it's like, no. And you really want to stop, try and stop it. And you do reach that end. Yeah, but there are so many. A god of small things, certainly.
Yeah, really good example of that. I think books are very difficult to put down once you've immersed yourself in them. Sometimes movie adaptations, it's easier to just switch them off, No, this is not something that I want to, I can kind of remove it. But I think that books, and especially if you've grown up as a reader and you know what books are like, I think books are just everything. Apart from the fact that, of course, you can't hear a book that you're holding, you can, an audiobook, of course, but you can smell them, you can look at them, you can look at all the visual absolute majesty of a book and hold it. So I think that this is it's just a great world. I think the written world and how it's created this masterful product that's called a book. I wanted to also know that so when you're reading books, I think sometimes it's about, this is such a lovely story, but because you both are writers and you always have that something's going on in your head. You must be walking around with a notepad sometimes. I know Paro takes a time at the traffic lights sometimes when, to note down some ideas and things. What do you do when there's this, idea bothering you while you're deeply immersed in a book?
Well, I often do write 2 books at a time because I dread the dreaded writer's block. And if I'm stuck with one story, I'll just jump to the other one. And in the writing and the sort of flow of the other one, I unblock the first book. So sometimes, or rather often, it's a novel and a collection of short stories. So I find that is a way to resolve that bit. But I have a file on my laptop which is called What an Idea Surgery. And ideas that come and pop in, I just put it into that. And then sometimes when I don't have something to write and I feel like writing, but I don't have an idea, I go to that and I start pulling at those threads. Some of them have become books, some of them don't. Some funny thing that you've seen, like I was at an airport in Paris, and the luggage, everybody's luggage had come, it was all going, my luggage hadn't. But there was one red stiletto shoe that was just going round and round and round, a patent leather stiletto shoe, single one, going round and round. And I thought, this is a story to write. And instead of looking for my luggage, I sat there, started to write it. It had to be written immediately.
That's really an interesting start to something. Yeah. Shabnam? Yes.
Yeah, so I have multiple diaries which I keep losing, multiple files in my computer which I keep forgetting of what I've named them, but basically called ideas, versions of, and I put stuff down. And a lot of my books have been born from that, sometimes that one moment of, the idea. Like when I do writing workshops with children, I'm always telling them your idea doesn't have to be something massive and complex. It can be just that 30 seconds. For example, what Maya saw happened when I was in the Xavier's library. And I just happened to look up. I was writing a book on the college. It was a hot afternoon. I just happened to look up and I saw a girl and I thought she had horns coming out of her head. Now, I was a mum of 3. The last thing you would want to do is run out of your college library shrieking your head off, but that's what I almost did. Luckily, I looked again, realized it was a trick of light. But I think that fear, that, 2 seconds of fear was so deep in me. I went home and wrote girl horns on head. Years later, I think 6 or 7 years later, I actually sat down and thought, what if that girl really had horns on her head? And that's where the book was born. So, yeah, so I put down a lot of ideas. Like Paro, some become books. Some just live in those battered notebooks forever to be found by who, God knows who, Randiwala somewhere. But but ideas are wonderful things. No? I think they're just so exciting. So every time I read a book, I feel jealous and angry and bitter. Oh, this is not fair. This was my story.
Yeah, absolutely.
when I haven't started a book and I read a very interesting title and I think, oh no, this is the book I should have written. And then I realize with great relief, this is not the book. I thought of something else. I probably will never write it, but I feel calm that my idea was. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's
But
the thing
Shabnam,
about being
sorry.
creative people. Yes, Paro. Yes.
Shabnam, that moment where in what Maya saw, when she looks askance and sees that girl with that smile and the horns, it haunted me. It was so frightening, that moment.
Yeah, it came out of a moment of true fear. You know, I almost went.
I was chilled, at that moment.
Yeah. Shabnam, you do that with your books. I think you just make us feel what your characters are feeling. Yes. So yeah, I hope you both are going to hang on to your ideas and write many, many more lovely books and all sorts of books. And please never to the Raddi, Shabnam. Please hang on to all your ideas. And Paro, you too. I think sometimes all of these things tucked away in drawers, forgotten. And I think, years later, when you get back to them, it might be a most interesting story than when you first started out thinking about it. So yes, it should just be like that. Any closing thoughts on our topic and anything you'd like to say? And of course, World Book Day is a great day to celebrate books that we all love. And yes, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to say that, especially for children, it's very necessary to transport to other worlds. And we've talked a lot about the magical worlds, but realities that other people live.
Yes.
And the creation of empathy that comes from reading a story about someone who is not us is very powerful as a tool for really making a human being a better human being.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'm not, I'm not a great one for magic and fantasy because, as Shabnam said earlier, that it's right here. Our reality it has so much depth and so much conflict and so many questions and so many answers. So that's why we need the books to transport us into other worlds.
Right.
Yeah. And I agree, today empathy has become this huge buzzword. But what is empathy? It's just being able to look at the world through other people's eyes and to stand in other people's shoes. And nothing does that the way a book can. So totally agree with you, Paro. I don't know, there are probably studies on this or maybe they're not, but I do believe that a reader, somebody who can walk into other lives, will possibly be a less heartless person. I don't know if that, but I think there's a chance.
Yes. And I think if they're wingless, they're definitely going to get wings, Paro. Yes. And I think, I think that is so important. But for kids to get the inherent message book or to just be able to see it for themselves, to be able to, understand that a character is going through a certain thing. So yes, I completely agree that it's not just about other worlds, but it's also about other characters, what they're living and, how we want to get readers to really be sensitized to what could be happening with other lives. It's such an important thing that books do and so effectively. So thank you. I think this has just been such a wonderful session. I've really enjoyed talking to you both. And of course, you continue to be and will always be my favorite authors. So thank you so much for being part of this session. Thank you. Thank you, Paro. Thank you, Shabnam.
Thanks, Tina.